Habemos Papam.
Yes.
Feel the 14th in the clutch. The topic of today's episode is the feminine genius.
She wears many hats.
And just a spanker of men on the... Welcome to the Rich Dawn, where eternal beatitude begins in this life. I'm Kyle Dean, and today I have with me my wife, Lauren Michelle. Lauren, how you been?
Hey, it's good to see you, Kyle Dean.
Hey, it's good to see you too, Lauren. And we're back. It's been, I don't know, like a month or more since we had an episode, which is the first time in Rich Dawn history in the years we've been podcasting with all the different iterations, different backdrops, and exciting things we've had going on. Mm-hmm. I have an incredibly exciting announcement to make. The reason that we've been off is because we made a huge investment in you. We invested in this ministry to the tune of 4 figures. I've taken on some advanced trainings in theology, psychology, morality, and theology of the body specifically. So there is just an abundant wealth of wisdom to share, to crack open, to get into with everybody, and just some like updates on what else has been going on. I mean, Habemos Papam.
Yes.
We got Leo the 14th in the clutch. Well, yeah. What you got a hot take on that?
My hot take is that I just love the chair of Peter. We all should. He's the chair is no longer sede vacante. There is a shepherd there for us. And man, as soon as I saw the altar server come out with the crucifix and just the breath that I took to just see the face of our next Peter was just a moment that led to some tears.
Yeah. Seeing that he was choked up, definitely.
He was too.
Yeah. You could see that the man was feeling the weight of this new responsibility. We've been to the Sistine Chapel before, and when you're looking at the altar to the left, there's the tier room, which is after, the Pope is elected. There's 3 things that need to happen when those ballots take place. There's consensus, and the current norm is 2/3 majority. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 88 or 89 votes they needed. And he has to accept freely with his will, consent of the will, and then he has to pick his name. Then the white smoke goes up. So that's what we just experienced. That was my first papal election really as a practicing Catholic. I kind of thought I was Catholic growing up, but I didn't know what the faith really was.
Right. Right.
Until, this election, that was surreal experiencing it, as an advocate for survivors as well. You hear in the era of instant information and news, it's like overwhelming because you always hear the good, the bad, and the ugly about everything. But the See of Peter is judged by none, and we have to. There's just so much that could be said about that spirituality component that goes into it, and the hope that we have.
Mm-hmm. Right. The gates of hell will not prevail.
Yeah.
Now, thanks to this man taking on this incredible challenge, and it's so exciting because I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about how his family members are still alive and how they get to witness and be part of this exciting moment as well, and that they were the ones who saw him grow and his formation, and to even fathom that he would have gotten to this point in his life must be really exciting and humbling for those who are still alive in his family. I know he has 2 brothers.
Yeah. And just to lay that to rest in a moment here, the topic of today's episode is the feminine genius. We're actually we're gonna get into that. We have an exciting announcement about what the next episode of the Rich Dawn is going to be. about the Blessed Mother. But yeah, for just final thoughts on the Pope conversation, for anybody that has not already taken this information into account, we're shooting this the day after it happened, with the hopes that it'll be out the following day. And so I don't know about you, but I mean, well, I do know about you. You and I have both been so incredibly busy that we haven't had, time to process information or news like, maybe in other times of life. I got friends out there that are like, they were doing like the deep bet, like status of all the possible popes, and like doing a deep dive on their lives and whether they wanted, who they wanted, this and that. I learned for the first time the name of like some guy. So, Pizza Balla. Apparently there's a Pizza Balla
Yes, I
out
saw
there.
that.
Yeah. Some people like this guy. I don't know anything about any of them. I just haven't had time. But I had no idea who even could be elected, except for, obviously we've always loved Cardinal Robert Sarah for many years. We're a traditional family, so we've got traditional values, and but it's not a political thing. I mean, you can't. I mean, you can be a political person and be a Catholic. We're not that. That's not this channel. But when it comes to who the Pope is, it's not a political thing. So I'll just close my thoughts with what I was able to learn and infer with very limited time. When the thing was going on live, I was on with Brother Dennis G of East to West Theology fame. That's another YouTube channel. And, we're both theologians, so we're pouring over some data. And he's like, what's the feast? Like, what's the traditional feast in the West? And I was like, let me check it. And we looked, and it's, white smoke was out. New Pope wasn't even on the loggia yet. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's the Feast of St. Michael.
Right.
This apparition in Rome, which happened in the 5th century. And then he comes out and he's like, I'm Leo the 14th. And I was like, okay, Leo the 13th is one of my favorite popes of all time. I have a personal devotion to him. He's a mystic. I hope that he'll, be sainted someday. Very Marian and spiritual warfare warrior. There was the famous private revelation that he had on October 13th, 1884. So there's also a pre-Fatima connection there. October 13th, Miracle of the Sun, where he was having like a private audience with his cardinals, or a private mass. And then he like went white and fainted. They thought he died.
Mm-hmm.
Came to, told them about this vision he saw of God and the devil conversing, and the devil like provoking God and trying to mock him and be like, if I had more power, I could take over your church. And God was like, I'll give you 100 years of like increased reign.
Right.
And good luck. And
Right.
and so theologians go back and forth all the time about when that year started. Some think 1917 with the Fatima apparition. Some think 1925 when the 10th apparition happened, or 1929 in relation to the events leading up to World War II. It's all over the map. Some think 1884, but I don't subscribe to that. But anyways, so the point is that that's when Leo the 13th penned the famous St. Michael prayer. It was prayed at the end of every mass in the Latin mass, low mass. And so whenever there was not a sung mass, or is not a sung mass, it's germane to pray that as part of the ending prayers. And so that's just a part of the tradition of the church. Now you've got this guy coming in on May 8th, the traditional feast of St. Michael's apparition in Rome, picking up the mantle of his predecessor, Leo the 13th.
Right.
And also on the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, which is, when America entered the war, we were able to end the Nazism and liberate Europe. So you've got this first time ever American Pope entering the papal scene. Kind of a cool providential backdrop.
It is. Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I don't have, first of all, the time or energy to look into, all the stats on which pope is the front runner, or which potential cardinal is the front runner for the pope. I wish I would, because it would be better to pray for them and to get a better sense of who is still leading our church in certain areas. However, I don't, and I just have this simple mindset that uh, God's going to choose whoever He has already chosen for our church, and um, I'm not going to put any extra emphasis on stressing out about it because it's all in His holy will. His will be done. So I feel grateful again that the chair is filled, and that I just pray for this holy pontificate, that it be a holy and righteous one in God's eyes.
Amen. Yeah. Trump as a president handled it gracefully, publicly. You got to wonder what he's thinking inside.
Hmm.
There's this American who he's like a tennis player. He's healthy. He's going to be around for a while,
That's
God
for
willing.
sure.
God willing. Probably going to long outreign Trump.
Yeah.
Both Americans,
Yeah.
all I know is hopefully he's the one, through that spiritual warfare to lead us either to prevent World War III or ultimately going to have to carry us through it.
Yeah.
And for the theologians out there, it's like, is this going to be the Pope that like concludes the 100-year reign of the increased reign of Satan?
Right.
I don't know. We'll
Time
see.
will tell.
Yep. All I know is we need strong leadership. So
Right.
God help us all.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, let's get into today's topic, the feminine genius. For any of our regulars, our subscribers that we're so grateful to have, you may have noticed with the recent episodes before we did have that, formative lull of publishing, that we've had a few women on.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been kind of like evening the stats a little bit more of
Yeah.
the ratio.
Yeah. And they're great conversations. They're fantastic conversations. There's about 11 videos.
Yeah, we just updated the channel with the Feminine Genius playlist. It's now on the top of the channel as of right now, for easy accessibility. And we categorized it from new to old. We've been going since 2023 in terms of publishing on this channel. For anyone who doesn't already know, I'm a certified life coach by trade. I've got well over 210 academic credits in that competency in the areas of psychology, philosophy, and theology. That's the equivalent of a doctorate. I was told, it would be like a triple master's degree. But I was told, okay, at this point, you don't say triple masters. Maybe you used to be able to say dual masters, but at this point, it's doctorate.
Yeah, right, of course.
In terms of equivalence. And I don't think that's even remotely controversial to say. I've seen people on YouTube, they literally refer to their channel as Dr. So-and-so, their name. And they open every video with, hey, I'm Dr. So-and-so, not a doctor. And then they just go and they get loads of subscribers.
Wow.
It's unbelievable what stock people put into perceived authority.
Those letters after your name.
Yeah, or at the beginning, at the end. But we're talking about extremely real authority in this case. I've been an authorized deliverance minister for going on a decade now. We bring such a wealth of wisdom to these conversations. And we don't usually overtly talk about this necessarily, but they're implicitly woven into all the conversations, just the different insights and wisdom that we've gained over the years. And with the women that have been coming on, especially lately, we've had that focus on the feminine genius, right? What is the feminine genius? So the feminine genius is the unique dignity and beauty of the feminine vocation, right? And you can have a faith-based understanding of that, and really that's going to give you the fullest understanding of what that means. But femininity is obviously for half of the humans on the planet, right? Give or take. It's for all of humanity, We need
Yes.
to acknowledge, the complementarity, but also the uniqueness in our sex roles. Some say gender roles, but women have a unique voice to add to the conversation. So maybe we can just kind of do a quick recap or rehash of the conversations that have taken place to date, and the more that'll be coming down the pipe by God's will. But before I do, maybe Lauren, we can kick it back to you. I mean, no one can touch on this subject better than a woman. So, what are your thoughts about just the feminine genius, and the conversations that you have seen with laying the groundwork for this important apostolate?
Oh yeah. I've been so pleased with the work that with the content that you've had amongst these women, and it's clear to me that these conversations are for everybody, man and woman. And I think especially in this day and age where um, the role of each sex is attacked vehemently, by the culture, by the world. It's nice to know that you can still have a conversation um, between a man and a woman about something so dignified and so worthy of praise. Just the fact that you are created. Uh, I went on a retreat a few years ago before meeting Kyle, and many years ago before meeting Kyle, and it was with the Sisters of Life, and I'll never forget. In one of our conversations, one of the sisters just reiterated that women are the crescendo of the Father's creation. That's always stuck with me. The crescendo of the Father's creation, as it expands, there's woman just at the top of His creation. So that's and in today's day and age, it's obvious that that's been being knocked down. So I appreciate the moments of wisdom that all the women have spoken with you about the certain vocations that God has called them to, or areas of expertise. Like I'm thinking right now of a conversation with Elizabeth Anna where, you really did speak about women's roles in society, and, maybe controversially, but speaking about, how women should dress, how women should act in society, um, what God is calling of them in those roles too. We forget that perhaps God does have already a rubric laid out for women in that capacity. So yeah, challenging conversations, which I think are important for women. Women can rise up when challenged, and it might take a little while. It might take some humility, but I think women can come around as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate your insights on that, Lauren, and of course, I'm so humbled and appreciative to have left to leave and cleave, to you. We're to become one flesh in matrimonial union, and maybe we could just, like we said, do a flyby of give people a little like a palate, a taste of the offerings right here, right now. And that brings us, from our earliest episodes. Episode 4 was the first woman on the channel, and it was you.
Was it?
Yeah, you and I journeyed to matrimony. I wouldn't have had it any other
Oh,
way. Yeah, of course, of course.
yes,
And
from the
and
beginning.
yeah, we really, we just kind of like, and it was a big moment for us as a Catholic couple. Like, we just kind of opened up to the world about a little bit about what it was like to date, and the difference between like Catholic courting and secular dating,
Yeah, right.
and how we've been tapped by the local bishops to serve our young adult community and ministry, and so we have a lot of wisdom there, and we've been so blessed to accompany multiple couples to their wedding day. I've done couples coaching with a bunch of people, and in some cases help them get to the to sometimes I say finish line, but it's really the starting line
Yeah, that's for sure.
of
Yeah.
of that new chapter
Right.
in the journey. And so, so we kicked it off for the sake of the channel with that. Then from there, episode 7, we had Christine on. Um, with Beyond the Shelves, A Librarian's Guide to Lasting Love. And she shared about, her vocation, her journey meeting her husband and what dating was like, and also her vocation as a librarian.
Yeah.
And she was incredibly inspirational. I mean, she was obviously, heroically putting out there that even something as benign as a library has become like a place where there's like a culture war.
Right. Right.
And while maintaining tact and decorum and diplomacy, we weren't afraid to go there.
Yeah.
It's like, like it's so important to just provide a safe space, especially because children are formed there.
Right. That's the expectation.
Oh, it's absolutely, it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And so, so we were able to get into that, which was amazing. And then later on, we had Nisha D'Souza on Perspective in the Art of Pilgrimage. And she and I riffed about, different pilgrimages that we've been on and how that's distinct from just going on vacation.
Right.
Like a
Right.
pilgrimage it's like a way of life. It's also a perspective. It's the recognition in humility that this is not our final destination.
Right. Right.
Right. For people of faith, we have three sources of temptation and three things that don't, define how we live our lives, in terms of like the world, the flesh, and the devil, and the negative things that they have to offer, and with the world in particular. So when you actually journey in this life with that perspective, it's different than, just wandering aimlessly or wandering just seeking pleasure or whatever the thing is, that people that don't have that faith informed lifestyle might do. So a lot of keen insights there.
Yeah.
And by the way, jump in anytime if you remember any of these conversations, because
Yeah, I just recalled Nisha too having just a wealth of knowledge in terms of how to experience a retreat, setting aside the cares of the world and really unpacking what God has in store for you. And she's been everywhere. she she travels. She's got the travel bug, and it's such a gift to see the universality of the church, especially in a international pilgrimage too.
yeah, she's got a lot of perspective. I think we touched on Fatima,
Yes,
and
Portugal, and
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And then moving on, a few episodes later, we had the one that you'd mentioned, skirts versus pants, the spicy topic
It's so controversial.
with Liz Anna. And yeah, but you know what? I was really honored to do this one in particular because and I give Liz so much credit because she was just like, let's do this thing. Like, it's one thing for me. I feel like if I'm given this talk or I break down a theological exposition on just like a really, really important um, pedagogical reality of culture. John Paul II talks about that a lot. St. JP2 with the theology of the body, like this, like pedagogy of the culture and how you can't, you can't allow your theology to be informed by any given culture or any given time period.
Yes.
And so, pants on women are like maybe a century old, if that, in the course of all of human history, which it's like, wow, like that changed things.
Right.
And it's not, you can go back and forth about decorum and modesty and what's right and wrong. But what we did in there is we broke it down in accordance with a book by Colleen Hammond, Dressing with Dignity, that's been published by TAN, and really laid out the theological case and the conclusion. Just spoiler alert, if you haven't already seen it, is that the church is very clear. There are moral manuals that are authoritative, and it says that something pertaining to the sixth commandment, like, chastity or a lack of chastity, There is literally no such thing as a venial version of that sin. Prumer, he's considered one of the most authoritative in terms of the moral manuals on this. It is point blank. It's right there. I don't have the book right in front of me, but we can reference it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that mean? It means that if men or women, by the way, this isn't like just about,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, this applies to both.
yeah, like how women dress and how men dress. Like if your clothing is form fitting to the point where there's like nothing left to the imagination, you're a source of scandal.
Right.
If you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in the order of responsibility, yes, you are responsible. If you know that, you know better, and you're leading other people to hell.
Right.
And, this is something that should be preached from the pulpits week in and week out. There's certain outfits that are just absolutely don't belong. Especially with more lay involvement on the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's an absolute non-negotiable.
Yeah.
It's not a preferential conversation. It's not an optional conversation.
Right.
And any spiritual father that is not enforcing that, that's abusive.
Right. And not to mention that spiritual father should also take a pastoral approach to it too. Like if he's noticing certain women, coming in a certain way, or certain men and women coming to the holy sacrifice of the Mass, like he should afterwards speak to them. He should take up that courage to really address the situation and to catechize individually, privately afterwards.
Right. As is appropriate. And I'm sure the majority, if not the vast majority of them do, right?
Yeah.
Obviously our spiritual.
You certainly hope so.
Yeah.
But, they could also take that cowardly approach as well and just not.
Oh, there's certainly some of that. I mean, Our Lady of Good Success in a church approved apparition in 1610, February 2nd in Quito, Ecuador, said, beginning the second half of the 20th century, there will be almost no secular clergy that are faithful left on planet Earth.
Right.
And that teaches you something very specific that, you got to look to the religious orders if you want to see the faithfulness maintained, because the secular clergy would be like diocesan clergy. And look, when the Blessed Virgin Mary says something, like, don't shoot the messenger. I mean, you couldn't. She's got literally an army of I don't even know how many thousands of angels. I mean, you're not even going to get close. But it's something that's super important to take seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that that's one thing that's exciting about with our new Pope. They always say that the priests that were formed in the era in the wake of like John Paul II, they want to return to orthodoxy.
Right.
They want to return to the tradition. And
right.
That's what, obviously the tradition is always the future of the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's all that it can be. It's one of the three pillars of Catholicism.
Right. Right. Oh, I saw a picture of our new Holy Father and Pope St. John Paul II.
Oh yeah, I think
coming
I see
together.
the same
one.
When he was young.
That was wonderful. Yeah, he was much younger priest.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's what everyone's starving for. The stats are so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you have a more traditional expression of Mass, the numbers are like, it's just not even in the same ballpark
right.
as when you go to a Mass when the priests aren't respecting the rubrics.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I saw just like an article through National Catholic Register about the increase of baptisms this year. All over the place.
Yes.
Seemed like it was just skyrocketing. And I think I remember catching that like the average traditional Catholic parish received a 34% increase in membership alone, which is wild. I mean, those parishes are growing. If you're not crying, you're dying. And that's obvious whenever you go to a traditional Latin Mass parish or just a reverent parish where the priest is the pastor and he takes his role so seriously. He's, a simple priest doing his job and keeping the sacraments present. You will see the fruits of that. And that's certainly the case. It certainly has been the case this year. I'm so glad it's been documented so well. all of
Yes.
those stats.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my good friend, the vocation director of our diocese. I was just at one of his masses very recently, and he was almost getting choked up, like
Mhm.
with gratitude and excitement for the future of our local church because we're getting a real uptick in interest. And that's what you want to see. And the fact that he's so inspired by it, you can tell that he really takes his role seriously, and and it inspires people like me. It inspires anybody who sees something like that.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? It's like that's what we need. So shout out to him on that.
Yeah.
So it's that was definitely an intense topic. That hats off to Liz for just sharing.
Mhm.
And I love the way that she said it too. She was like, "Look, it's just that this has a right to be a part of the conversation too. It's
Yes,
not it's not about judgmentalism. It's
absolutely.
not about comparison. You know what I mean? You got to be cautious with comparison because
Mhm.
people that like to compare, I have to teach this with my clients a lot of times. It's like that can be an indicator of envy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
envy is a very dangerous spiritual sin.
Mhm.
Like whenever there's a whole lot of like, keeping up with the Joneses, or looking at what other people have going on, and you maybe don't have the log out of your own eye,
Yeah,
that's not the point.
right.
So it really does require a tremendous amount of tact to have these conversations and implement the wisdom in a way that's pastorally prudent.
Yeah.
So
Right.
can't emphasize that enough. But moving right along, then. So we had Riley on
Mhm.
from the front lines of ministry. This was at a time when she was launching a ministry. This was near and dear to my heart because she had really kind of come up and grown in some of the young adult ministry efforts that we were doing.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and she learned a ton, and she was just like, she was so inspired. She was like, we have to keep spreading this. We gotta spread this throughout the whole diocese. And so she shared, the wisdom and insights specifically from the context of leading and participating in ministry.
Mhm.
So obviously great wisdom there. And so then we came back on doing a take on the Madonna of the Harpies and a papal letter,
Yeah.
JP2's papal letter to the
Right. Letter to
artists.
the artists.
Yeah, that's you wanna maybe do a quick little recap on that one because that's something that's been near dear to your heart.
Sure, yeah. The Madonna of the Harpies is a beautiful painting, which we have here in this very room that we're sitting. Unfortunately, the audience will be able to see it directly, but if you can just imagine on a small pedestal, there is our Blessed Mother, and her son is grasping to her as a small child. It's really breathtaking. And then to her left, she has Saint John, the beloved disciple, as well as St. Francis of Assisi on the right. And I'm looking over here to my left because
I'm really just trying to
the,
picture it.
oh,
Oh, hold on.
there we go. Yes.
Yes.
Front and center now. Um, and she also has some angels down below. But we spoke about how this incredible work of art, which Kyle is more attuned to it than I am, and just relating it to Pope John Paul's letter to the artists, sharing that,
Which you're way more attuned to than I am.
yes, and of course now in this moment of not studying it
Oh yeah, this
for
is
so
date
long
night.
ago, woof, uh, my memory's showing the best of me.
Well, it's all about the fact that beauty.
Beauty can really, beauty can save the world, and we should continue to strive for that excellence in beauty, because beauty, truth, and goodness are all those incredible qualities of God himself, the creator himself, the creator taking on the created work, um, and helping to bring others into his fold. That was a good conversation. That
Yeah,
was a bit ago.
yeah, I know. It's hard to believe how the time flies.
Yes.
I don't even know how many kids ago that was, but but it's all grace. And yeah, we and we probably touched on it in there, but we have a very special affinity to this multivalent artwork by Del Sarto for numerous reasons, but not least of which, was brought into my life after saving somebody's life from a very serious medical emergency, um and he gifted that to us in a porcelain statue as a thank you. And obviously it was a tremendous honor, and it was just what I needed in terms of what it taught me in the moment, the experience,
Yeah.
this aspect of Our Lady, and my relationship with her. So yeah, it was great stuff, great episode. And then we had Dr. Frassini on, um bringing on, hold on a second, wait a minute. Yep. The origins of Frassini transformative coaching. And so we really kind of cracked into another multivalent conversation, just like entrepreneurialism, nursing, the state of healthcare, the importance of collaboration and thinking creatively to meet the needs of people in this day and age, as she's doing, as I'm doing, as a life coach, and just the importance of collaboration, and also a really touching story about her personal life and faith journey. With struggling through divorce and just going through the annulment process and the humility of that and being there for her children. I mean, she really, really inspired me with this conversation because she was really vulnerable and raw and real, so it was really special, really special. And then we had Lucy Maria, international chess master, chef extraordinaire.
She wears many hats.
And just a spanker of men on the on the chessboard, including myself. What did you think of that episode? What did you learn?
Oh, yeah.
And men in dresses, but that's another.
I so appreciate her vivacity for life and her kindness and her sweetness and just the way she is so direct with the sharing of herself and of her stories on that podcast. And oh man, it brings so many memories back. That was a great conversation. And the genius of Lucy.
Yes.
She's wonderful woman. Yes, that was a good one.
Thank you.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. She's legit. Definitely brought like a lighthearted, almost playful spirit to that one.
Yes.
So if that's your flavor
for it.
Yeah, if that's your flavor of podcasting, get on over there. And and then moving right along to another really inspirational one, Lindsay Adornetto, powerhouse in the local community. This whole apostolate really kind of got kicked off because, for multiple reasons, but one, spiritual director, obedience, right? A healing ministry, right? Every once in a while you get, perspectives from, an abuse survivor and, the importance of leaning into your faith as opposed to away from it, but I say that with a tremendous sensitivity to the fact that that requires also justice and humility and transparency and everything else. But then also the importance of connecting the community. And that's what we did here with Lindsay. Lindsay really opened up about, again, with also an entrepreneurialism flavor, like what she's doing. She just launched Live Victorious, and and she's transforming the community through that important work, right. Connecting people, bringing them together. And so she also, similarly with Dr. Frassini, really opened up, with vulnerability about, especially the scourge of loneliness that
Yeah.
I was just up to date on the latest stats like a couple days ago. I think it's like over 20% of people identify with like a deep
Yeah.
loneliness, and like maybe one of four. And, and Lindsay really, she just said like, look, this was a challenge of mine,
Yeah.
and I wasn't finding men that were treating me appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
as a man of God ought to.
Right.
And these are the things I learned. These are the things, like she was just very humble about like, this is how to learn, and for other people, don't fall into this.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that because she has really leaned into her faith,
Mm-hmm.
especially of late, kind of like converting, that, that's a renewed source of strength for her.
Yeah. That was a great conversation. It was great um to have just someone on the channel who's willing to talk about something that might be taboo. Saying that I'm lonely is not something that you hear people really admit, and it is an epidemic in our culture, like you're saying. And it's only going to get, I mean, it can only get worse if there's such a self-reliance on this screen that's in front of you telling you what to do and how to act and how to talk to people, or not, because you're so secluded from society, if that's your own the only interaction that you're getting with anything. um, and I so appreciate Lindsay being vulnerable about talking about what she's gone through, and yeah, that loneliness that so many feel. I mean, how wonderful that Lindsay decided to dedicate her life and her vocation to helping others find their vocation. Hats off to you, Lindsay. I think that's a wonderful gift that you're providing the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we have post-pandemic profiteering. We had Kara Dennis on, who is an Eastern Catholic, and also launching a YouTube channel, so check that out. And an addictions nurse, and involved with rehabilitation as well, and really candid conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was just like, like there's a lot of issues going on in post-pandemic, um, in the post-pandemic medical field,
Mm-hmm.
which is, like a conversation that I think it's one of those things that if we let it, it'll become taboo.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should, because I mean, without getting political or without trying to take a side on where you stand on how everything was handled, the reality is that it affected everybody. Society as we knew it went grinded to a halt. Things happened that just don't normally ever happen. I think that a lot of people, if not most, felt, like violated, or just uh,
Certainly pressured
the
to make a quick decision.
the way that human beings treated each other. I'm not even talking about decisions of any kind. I'm just talking about the way that interpersonal communication takes place was shaken up.
Yeah.
So making sure that people are talking, to each other and not at each other,
Hmm.
or that people are hearing each other, like truly listening and able to empathize with our needs, our very visceral, real human needs. Obviously, the isolation. I mean, isolation is it's like condemned in the Geneva Convention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of torture.
Right.
Like, no one gets to say like, oh, okay, that's not going to have a psychological impact on somebody that could potentially be long lasting.
Right.
You don't get to decide that whether or not that's going to physiologically happen to someone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But if it's literally everywhere, I mean, how do you even recover from that?
Right.
And, and I think it starts with like just exactly what we're doing right now and what Kara and I did then, which is you got to be able to talk about it. See, one of the things people may not realize this, one of the value adds that a life coach can bring to your life, as well as therapists and other professionals, is that when you bring the right words to somebody, you're actually moving the blood in their brain and in their body to the places that it belongs.
Right.
People don't realize that the power of just good conversation, the art of listening well. And, you know, that, and then in the instance of what Kara brought to everyone's attention, the fact that, you know, the people that are really on the margins of society, the people that, you know, maybe the modern day lepers that are having really serious mental health struggles that you don't even know what they're going through. They're not even given autonomy. So it's like they're the most vulnerable. And maybe the in her take, a lot of the healthcare providers themselves are burned out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my goodness, if the people that need to like have their oxygen masks on and then get the oxygen mask on other people
Right.
are having a hard time, where are we going?
Right. And not to mention those healthcare professionals aren't necessarily trained properly or trained to the level that's necessary for this advanced level of stress that these patients are experiencing. As well, there's maybe a little more of a liability that healthcare professional, you know, the field of healthcare professional, those who are in, you know, compliance and whatnot, there's a lot more pressure for these healthcare professionals, these nurses, to act in a way that's maybe less caring because those above them don't want any kind of liability, which is very sad because ultimately at the end of the day, you know, nurses and doctors who are there and want to care so well for their patients aren't able to do so properly or to the best of their ability or to, you know, what speaks to their heart and how to care in the moment.
Yeah, I mean that's a real concern.
Yeah.
That and that opens up. I think I mentioned this with my conversation with Lindsay that when you really do a deep dive on psychology, human psychology, what you come to discover as a Catholic is that all of the fundamentals of modern psychology are broken at the level of first principles. And first principles are the principles that inform an entire body of study. They form the entire system, the coherence of, you know, in this case, you know, what is to be done to treat somebody at the level of, you know, the mind and the psyche. And when the first principles are already flawed, the conclusions are going to become flawed. And we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
That's one reason why it's so humbling to be involved in the field of deliverance, because it's categorically impossible to get the level of expertise in a secular setting if you're not at least open to the fullness of truth.
Right.
And therefore, you know what I mean? It's like, it just becomes almost this form of, I don't want to say coercion, and I don't mean to be controversial with this conversation whatsoever, but if people feel like in order to get some level of care, they have to make compromises in other areas that maybe they shouldn't have to.
Right.
Then what is really needed there is a level of advocacy that is capable of truly healing the system.
Yep.
It has to happen.
Yes.
So, you know, hats off to Kara for a very courageous conversation.
Right.
I really didn't know what to expect going in, which is sometimes just the nature of podcasting. And but you know, that's also what comes with humble listening. You know, I mean, you're hearing at a heart level, you know, something that deserves attention.
Right. Right.
So, and then that brings us to the latest until this one, and then the announcement about the next one, with really kind of a crowning achievement of the feminine genius in the title, the all-encompassing title, "Women of All Seasons."
Yes.
With Annie Schuler. She's an author, also an entrepreneur in that sense. And really share with us her faith journey of developing this book of that same title.
Right.
Women of All Seasons, with a specific target audience of girls.
Right.
Girls
Right.
who are experiencing menstrual cycles for the first time,
Hmm.
and the accompaniment that goes with that. We open that one saying, you maybe have a parent with you
Right.
if you're watching it, just because of the sensitivity of it. But uh, she did such an incredible job of making that accessible, and in a really, really formationally important chapter of a girl's life.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. The metaphoric way that she relates the cycles to the seasons, the cycle to the four seasons, would have been something nice for me to have growing up as well. I really, I, I sincerely hope that so many young girls, receive this book and crack it open and aren't afraid to like have the conversation moving forward with their mothers, their parents, guardians, so they can really understand from the feminine genius themselves in their lives what is about to transpire uh, in the future, so that they become the crescendo of the Father's creation.
See,
Just
this
like
is
to
the
drop
part.
that in.
This is the part of the podcast now where, because you are my wife, I can do things that I can't, maybe do in a professional setting. I'm just going to ask you right now, what was it like for you that made you wish that you had this information? No stress.
Yeah, wow. I am just going to go with sharing that. I was a very shy individual growing up. I still have my moments. I've noticed I still have my moments as an adult. So opening up and sharing with my parent what is going on in my life when it comes to things changing was not my cup of tea or what I was really interested in talking about. So uh,
Yes.
yeah, that's all
So
I can
so
say.
maybe, going it not alone, but
Yeah,
not necessarily in as accompanied a environment,
yeah,
as if
that's
you
fair.
if you already have language
Right.
to plug
Yeah.
into.
I think I really needed that language, and I think that especially in a culture where we can't communicate with with one another without putting an emoji on something or a thumbs up, like that is so critical. That's so critical to give you that warmth to um to this transfiguration of yourself.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
No, that makes sense. And just obviously I was being a little silly with you for a
you
moment,
certainly were.
but knowing you so well, and I know that you're a very intentional person. And if there's a solemnity about something, like you want to have that reverence
Mhm.
that belongs there. And so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, and Annie did a great job. She's an expert in
it was a
that
great
area.
conversation.
She's a biologist, by training. So couldn't have a more qualified person to tackle that subject. And I was just so humbled and grateful. It was also kind of funny. We had a moment in there where it's like, she's like, I'm actually really introverted, but she's the one that told me, she's like, I think we should do this on your podcast.
She
And
did.
and as a man,
She
I
did.
had a moment where I was like, I think this is what God's calling me to at this moment.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in this, but
Right.
I'm, by God's grace, hopefully you maybe agree, if you're listening this far, halfway decent at, podcasting and communicating, and so we did that, and we were able
Yeah.
to bring that resource to people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That was a great conversation as well. I think that I pray that fruit comes from it. And I think she is doing wonderful work there. And I hope that we can help in whatever way possible to get that book into as many hands as we can.
yeah, absolutely. And just concluding with that, you actually just touched on a really important point about language. And there's a language of the body and theology of the body,
Hmm.
and it's distinct from body language. It's not about gestures
Yeah.
or this or that, but it's about how the body is a sign to something deeper. And, you know, and especially when it comes to human sexuality, because, the things that distinguish us as men and women, and help us to have that recognition, teach us something about the inner life that we have. And of course, the inner life is at the level of the soul, but the body, it informs that. So, and that's the language of the body. It's what can we learn about being an embodied person? And, because we are a people, not just humans, right? We have human nature. Human nature is what we are, but as a human person, that's who we are. And who we are is utterly unique. There is never going to be another Lauren, another Kyle Dean. And so in our bodies, point to something about who we are in our totality.
Yes.
You can't ever talk about the body independent of the soul or the spirit, and vice versa.
Right.
And of course, there's a hierarchy there. There's a supremacy of the spirit over the body, but they're complementary. Just as the sexes are complementary to each other, we need each other in order to complete each other. And, there's such a deep reverence to that. There's, the way that we express our bodies as signs that teach whether or not we are fulfilling the prophetic office, because we're made in the image and likeness of God. So, we're supposed to exemplify that, embody that, show that, demonstrate that by the way that we carry ourselves. Because either we are informing other people of the reality of God, or we're choosing a lesser path. Mm-hmm. So, with that conclusion in mind, just instinctively in the way that you shared your own story about girlhood, before developing into womanhood, like we just know this as human beings at a visceral level. And, but by being able to grow in language expression and the opportunities to demonstrate humility, decorum, modesty, right? Those are sub virtues to temperance, and unify that with the totality of all the seven heavenly virtues and our soul body composites, the anthropology that makes us up. Then we can really fulfill our destinies.
Sure. Right. Right. We're called to be, we are made in his image and likeness, and called to be reunited with him. Holy.
Yeah. Reintegration, with the Trinity. It's a holy communion of persons. Yeah. Right. So, with that, I'm very grateful we got to have another date night, and to share it with y'all. The final announcement is that after this episode is published, I recently gave a live talk on the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it is a really comprehensive, systematic exposition on who Mary is. I mean, you want to talk feminine genius.
Yes.
I break down the 4 dogmas of Mary and also the 5th Marian doctrine of Mary's spiritual maternity, and hopefully in a way that maybe you've never heard it before. Certainly in a way that's informed by my deep devotion to Mary. And so anyway, stay tuned for that. We planted the seed. Maybe as we wrap up this conversation, we can conclude with the other of announcements that, just got swept up in this past month that we haven't been publishing. And that is that we just made it to a decade of decades. I mean, you're fast on the heels of that anyway. And I did. And we as a family,
right.
just achieved a major milestone. Just as I had mentioned, I wasn't, this was my first papal conclave as a practicing Catholic. Um, I came into the faith because of a very profound encounter with the Blessed Virgin Mary. Um, to the point where I had to have 10 years of extensive, rigorous monthly spiritual direction
Yeah.
about it. And it's all legit. It's
Hmm.
been vetted by the church.
Yes.
And so we hit the 10-year marker of Marian consecration with daily rosaries, and we're going to keep it going by God's grace for life.
Absolutely.
Do you have any maybe just closing reflections on? I almost think that we should be dedicating an episode to it. That was actually the original
Yeah.
plan when it happened, but we've just been so busy investing in being able to just continually increase the value of the information that we share for you. But I don't know, maybe just some anything brief that comes to mind about what it's been like doing daily rosaries ever since we've been engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been definitely a devotion that's grown as the years have gone by. There's not, if there's a day where, um, it's the end of the night and the rosary hasn't been prayed, it does feel like there's a nakedness almost that, we haven't done that yet. And how could we have possibly, how could we obviously can't let this day go by without without speaking to our mother, without praying to her, without asking for her to intercede for us. She is the Queen of Heaven, and we desperately need her to help us and to advocate for us. And I have been so grateful to Kyle to have introduced this daily devotion to me in my life. Before this moment, I'd probably prayed the rosary like once a week or something like that in my adult life. Outside of leaving my family and coming to live in Buffalo, probably, yeah, once a week. And I would say that, there wasn't much of a rhythm, but having that rosary and hanging on to those beads and, stating the same prayer as the angel Gabriel did, Ave Maria Gratia Plena, just recognizing that she is, so immaculately conceived and just so worthy of praise is such a grace. And I'm so grateful to our mother for all that she's done, especially now that I am a mother as well. We were recently watching The Passion of the Christ, and that scene where our Lord is carrying his cross and falls down in that alleyway where she sees him. That has been the scene that has really been choking, allows me, I usually choke up to that in that moment where she sees her son fall and she goes to be with him. And he says, "Mother, I make all things new," and then gets up and walks away. And you can just see the anguish that she has. But you think about Easter Sunday and that anguish just totally disappearing. So, yeah, our mother is fantastic, and I'm grateful to her.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing, Laura. Yeah. And I mean, I choke. I tear up every single time I see Mary in the Passion. Like
Yeah.
every time. And whatever. I have no qualms sharing that as a man. A man is not weepy at all, really. But when it comes to my mom, she is just the holiest creature ever to have lived and ever will live. She saved my life. She has uh, taught me what it means to be a man. I give her all the credit for showing me who her son is, and which has enabled me to, uh, you know, even though I am the most worthless sinner on earth and worthy only of hell. That's what true humility is. There's not a day of my life that I do not wake up and realize that every single good thing that I have in my life, that I've ever had and that I ever will have, comes from God. And that everything else, all the garbage, that's me. That's me.
Mm.
And that's all I have without God. And I think that, but that humility, true humility, doesn't mean that you're some like doormat. It doesn't mean that you're pusillanimous. It doesn't mean that you're a pushover. Certainly not. And I don't think I'm typically accused of being one of those. But it is a recognition of groundedness in the truth. And it also, a healthy humility brings with it gratitude. And a gratitude attitude, I mean, it makes you happy. It makes you appreciative. For anybody who might struggle with the scourge of envy, it's one of the antidotes to envy. Gratitude's excellent. I mean, it's like a phenomenal life hack. Got to get it in your life if you don't have it, like all the time. And what Our Lady teaches us is how to do that when it's hard. Like when you're suffering. She is the master, the mistress of suffering well.
Yeah.
And, she demonstrated it at the foot of the cross. It's actually one of the many multivalent reasons why we have such a devotion to the Madonna of the Harpies, because you see flanked there Francis of Assisi, but also John the Evangelist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's John the Evangelist who was there, in John 19, verses 25 through 27, right? The final act of Jesus on the cross before he gave up the Holy Ghost was to give Mary to John and to give John to Mary. And in that moment, John represented not only the apostles, not only all of the faithful, but all of humanity.
Right.
And so she's your mom, whether you realize it or not. Like,
Behold your mother.
If you're a human person, and if the words that are coming through this transmission are registering, it's probably an indication that you're a human person. You're a rational being. Mary is your mom. And if you're open to that, like for me, the worst wretch on this earth, she can transform your life and make you into a saint. And it's just exceptional. If you allow it, you have to give your fiat. You have to allow your free will, just like her free will is what gave us Jesus. As Mother Teresa of Calcutta said, no Jesus, no Mary, no Jesus.
Yeah.
Simple. Pious simplicity. No Mary, no Jesus. But with Mary, Jesus. No, that's the way to go.
Right.
So yeah, we and if you gain any wisdom from this, hit us up in the comments. Let us know how it goes. If anybody's interested in hearing, we'll definitely be sharing some insights about the rosary as life goes on, even just as like a married couple, like, how to get the kids involved, how to never miss a day, how to, and very, very rarely you just double up the next day. It's real simple, but just all those little things, like the soft skills that go into it. And then of course the fruits of the reflections that you get, how to conquer dryness. It's going to happen if you're going 10 years straight or longer. These are some of the insights that you can read about it in a book, but when you're walking with somebody that's living it, that's walking the walk, it can help you to do the same. So, yeah, look out for that upcoming Mary Talk. It's very enriching. And yeah, all glory to God.
Amen. Yes.
Ad Jesum per Mariam. Ad Joseph.
Ad Joseph.
Yeah. So, final wisdom.
Oh. Pray the rosary. That's all.
And with that, if you enjoy content like this, please like, subscribe, share, again, comment. Check out therichddawn.com. That's therichddawn.com. Like beautiful morning, as you see in the beginning of these episodes. If you would like to sign up for some life coaching, and God bless you.